The scene opens on a desolate, war-torn area, with a dilapidated building and a couple of vehicles parked outside, setting a grim and tense atmosphere. Inside a dark room, an injured soldier with blonde hair sits defeated. He looks up at a figure standing over him and apologizes, saying, "I'm sorry that things have turned out this way, Professor." The man addressed as a professor, an older gentleman, tells the soldier not to say that. He takes the blame himself, introducing the soldier as Major Kong and expressing his own sorrow for getting the Major and his men into this situation. Major Kong bows his head in despair, lamenting that their rescue mission would have succeeded if their informant hadn't betrayed them. He thinks about how his men were not common militia, but highly trained soldiers. His frustration grows as he recalls the overwhelming enemy force, which was triple the manpower their intelligence had projected. Major Kong realizes the full extent of betrayal. The enemy knew all the details of their plans and set a perfect ambush. He concludes that the entire operation was a meticulously planned trap designed to lure them into this mess. The sound of a door rattling interrupts his thoughts. Suddenly, the door bursts open with a loud clang, and a dark silhouette of a person is revealed in the bright light from outside. One of Major Kang's men, already wounded, lets out a pained groan as he lies on the floor. Another soldier cries out in horror, Sergeant Kim, his face a mask of shock and fear. Just then, a mysterious new figure appears, clad in black and a mask, with a swift and brutal thwack. The masked mercenary strikes down the enemy soldier, blood splattering from the impact. Enemy soldier, wearing a helmet, smirks confidently as he watches the chaos, unaware of the true danger that has just arrived. A soldier groans in pain, his face etched with agony from the ongoing battle. The room is in disarray, with the professor and Major Kong still captive on the floor as the conflict continues around them with a loud clang. One of his surviving men, also injured, crawls over to check on him. "Major Kong, are you all right?" Major Kong, ever the leader, dismisses his own condition and asks about the rest of the men. The soldier looks distraught, reporting that he doesn't know what happened to the others, only that they were all taken somewhere. His words are cut short by a rattling sound. He and Major Kong both turn their heads towards the noise. Major Kong looks up from his seated position on the floor, his eyes fixed on the source of the sound. An enemy's foot slams down next to Major Kong as he wonders what will happen now. The mercenary silhouette looms over them, a figure of both hope and uncertainty in the dim light. The figure then speaks, his voice cutting through the tension as he looks down to confirm his target. "Are you Major Hamchan Kong?" A full view shows a mysterious mercenary, Ijinyu, standing tall. He is clad in tactical gear, his face obscured by a houndstooth-patterned scarf and head wrap, making his appearance both professional and intimidating. Major Kong is shocked, his internal monologue revealing his surprise. He speaks Korean? Wary and sweating, Major Kong looks up at his potential rescuer and demands, "Who are you?" As Ijinyu stands silhouetted in the doorway, Major Kong notes that while his Korean isn't perfectly fluent, he definitely understands the language. Ijinyu gets straight to the point, looking down at the captives. "I came for you," he states, then issues a command. "All you prisoners, follow me." From a high angle, we see Ijin leading Major Kong and the professor down a hallway littered with the bodies of neutralized guards. Major Kong is astonished that all these men were taken down without him hearing a single sound. As they move, Major Kong, now armed with a rifle, questions Ijin about his allegiances, asking which division he's from and the size of his force. Ijin coldly replies that he can't name his employer and that he came alone. Major Kong is stunned into silence, utterly shocked by the revelation that this single mercenary knocked out so many trained soldiers all by himself. His disbelief continues as he processes the fact that Ijin managed to do it all completely undetected. Just then, an enemy guard cautiously peeks around a corner down the hallway, and a soft thunk is heard. Spotting the new threat, Major Kong immediately raises his weapon and shouts a warning to the others. It's one of them. The enemy guard is startled, exclaiming in surprise as Ijinyu seemingly teleports in front of him and grabs him before he can react. With fluid motion, Ijin twists the guard's arm, disarming him of his pistol in a single, efficient movement. Major Kang's face is tense with sweat as he notices another enemy soldier positioned on the opposite side of the hallway. He realizes the grim reality of their situation. We won't get past them quietly. Without a moment's hesitation, Aijin lunges forward, a blur of motion, ready to engage the new threats head-on. Aijin delivers a swift, powerful blow to the first guard's head, the impact echoing with a loud pow. He follows up immediately with another strike, a hard-hitting BM that incapacitates the guard. The first guard collapses to the floor with a heavy thud, completely neutralized. The second guard, armed with a rifle, looks on in shock and confusion, realizing his comrade has been taken down. Before the second guard can even process the situation, Aijin closes the distance in a flash, his eyes locked on the target. A swish sound effect emphasizes Aijin's incredible speed as he moves in for the final takedown. The attack is swift and lethal, ending with a brutal stab as Aijin incapacitates the final guard in the corridor. Aijin stands calmly in the doorway. The two enemy guards now lie defeated at his feet, the path once again clear. Major Kong is left speechless, his mind reeling as he watches Aijin casually spin the pistol he just confiscated. The mercenary had instantly disarmed two armed men, without using his own gun, a feat of chilling proficiency that makes the Major question just what kind of agency he could possibly be from. With a practiced kachunk, Aijin attaches a silencer. He issues a cold, commanding order to the group. We must pick up the pace. He then looks pointedly at Major Kong, giving a final, clear instruction. I'll take care of the hostiles. Don't use your rifle unless it's necessary. A bit taken aback, Major Kong stammers out an agreement. Internally, however, he understands the mercenary's cold, clear message. Don't get in my way. The air is filled with the soft push of a silenced pistol as Aijin goes to work, his shots precise and deadly. In a blur of motion, Aijin takes down two enemies at once, the silenced bullets hitting their marks with deadly precision, indicated by the sound whip. He runs relentlessly down the corridor, his footsteps a rapid ta-data, as he advances with the silenced pistol leading the way. An enemy opens fire with a submachine gun, but Aijin is faster, returning fire with his silenced pistol and landing multiple shots before the enemy can react. Major Kong struggles to keep up as he and Aijin sprint down a hallway, the urgency of their escape clear. They hear the voices of multiple hostiles up ahead, echoing from the end of the long, narrow passageway. Major Kong grips his rifle, steeling himself for a fight. He decides he has to help, thinking to himself that the time for being quiet is over. However, before the Major can move, Aijin dashes forward alone, charging headfirst toward a group of enemies. Major Kong watches in disbelief, questioning the mercenaries' reckless tactics. He thinks they should be approaching the situation with more caution and strategy. At the end of the hall, a group of three unsuspecting enemies are casually chatting, completely unaware of the lone fighter hurtling towards them. Aijin expertly skids into cover just before the corner, disappearing from the enemy's line of sight as he prepares his attack. From the shadows, Aijin's determined eyes focus as he takes aim with his pistol, the barrel pointed directly at the unsuspecting foes. From Aijin's point of view, we see the flawless execution as he takes down all three hostiles in rapid succession with perfectly aimed shots. In a fluid motion, Aijin jumps over an obstacle, simultaneously ejecting the empty magazine from his pistol. He seamlessly slaps a new magazine into his handgun with a crisp ka-chunk sound, never breaking his stride. Major Kong is seen scrambling to keep up, his face a mixture of exhaustion and awe at the mercenary's relentless pace. Looking at the bodies of the fallen enemies and Aijin already moving ahead, Major Kong can only think one thing in utter astonishment. What a beast! As he follows, Major Kong reflects on the mercenary's fighting style. While incredibly effective, he notes that Aijin's tactics are far too reckless for any typical military soldier. Finally, the two of them make it outside the compound, running along a brick wall under the open sky. Suddenly, Aijin raises a fist, signaling a halt. He looks back at the bewildered Major Kong and instructs, "We wait here 1 minute." Breathing heavily and clearly exhausted, Major Kong questions a sudden stop, asking, "What for?" Aijin glances back, his expression unreadable behind a mask, as Major Kong catches his breath. The reason for the pause becomes clear as the other prisoners, including the professor, are seen struggling to catch up, panting and huffing from exhaustion in the alleyway behind them. Aijin briefly reflects, realizing he failed to account for the poor physical condition of the men he was rescuing. He internally criticizes himself, thinking that no matter the circumstances, he should have kept their state in mind. Major Kong looks at Aijin, a realization dawning on him about the mercenary's sudden pause. He understands now that the 1-minute wait wasn't random. His internal monologue reveals his amazement, which means he was calculating all that this whole time. Observing the mysterious fighter more closely, Major Kong notes his features, starting with his eyes. He has black eyes. His thoughts continue as he puts the pieces together. And he speaks good Korean, even though it's not quite perfect. Driven by his growing curiosity, Major Kong directly asks the question that's been on his mind. Are you Korean? Aijin completely ignores the question. His only response is a curt time to move, as he turns and continues a mission, leaving the Major to follow. The group moves through a field of tall grass with a whoosh. Major Kong takes the lead, providing arm cover while his rescue men trail behind him. Suddenly, a familiar voice cuts through the air, shouting, Major Kong. In the distance, the rest of his platoon is waiting by a military jeep, appearing safe and sound. Major Kong is floored, his mind racing with disbelief. My platoon, but they were all taken somewhere else. A wide, relieved smile breaks across his face. He eagerly calls out to his men, How did you all get here? One of his soldiers explains, gesturing towards Aijin. It turns out the mercenary had rescued him first and told him to wait at the rendezvous point. With the rustle of the grass, Aijin announces the completion of his mission. He gives them final instructions to continue southwest to their extraction point and begins to depart. Looking at the retreating mercenary with genuine gratitude, Major Kong offers a simple but heartfelt, Thank you. Aijin dismisses the gratitude, stating coldly that there is no need for thanks, as he was just carrying out a paid commission. Major Kong smirks slightly, his suspicion confirmed. A mercenary like I figured. Despite the cold rebuttal, Major Kong steps forward and reaches out his hand for a handshake, determined to show his appreciation. He insists, telling Aijin that even if it was just a job, he still wanted to thank him properly for saving both him and his men. Aijin hesitates for a moment, his masked eyes looking at the Major, seemingly processing the genuine gratitude being offered. Just as their hands are about to meet, the moment is shattered by a sudden, violent blur. Something whistles through the air at incredible speed, hurtling toward their location. A massive explosion erupts just feet away from them, sending a shockwave through the field. Reacting instantly to the danger, Aijin's eyes snap wide with alarm, the red background highlighting the sudden peril. Major Kong is caught completely off guard, his face filled with shock and confusion as he asks, What's that sound? The shockwave from the mortar tears at Aijin's head wrap. For the first time, his face is partially exposed, revealing not the hardened veteran Major Kong expected, but the sharp, intense eye of a boy who looks barely out of his teens. As the whistle of another incoming round cuts the air, Aijin's training takes over. He bellows a desperate, urgent command to the shell-shocked soldiers, Get down! Major Kang's platoon is frozen in place, stunned by the sudden and violent explosion. A second mortar strikes with a deafening kaboom, engulfing the area in fire and smoke. Major Kong cries out in pain, clutching his head as the force of the blast overwhelms his senses. Dazed and confused, he identifies the source of the attack in a panicked thought. Is it a mortar? His hearing is gone, and his first thought is for the safety of his men and the professor. Looking through the smoke, he sees him scrambling away from the blast zone. He feels a wave of relief as he confirms his men are unharmed, having successfully taken cover from the explosions. Through the ringing in his ears, Major Kong picks up on a new, alarming sound cutting through chaos. His military instincts kick in as he identifies a distinct sound of gunfire. The source is an enemy encampment on a nearby ridge, where soldiers are operating a mortar and laying down heavy machine gun fire. Major Kong, still recovering from the blast, looks on in stunned silence at the unfolding scene. His shock turns to disbelief as he sees the mercenary, Aijinyu, fully exposed and returning fire all by himself. His head covering now gone, Aijin's youthful appearance is undeniable. With intense focus, Aijin relentlessly fires his rifle, providing crucial cover for the escaping soldiers. Major Kong can only stare, his face a picture of pure astonishment as he watches a lone fighter hold back the enemy. The full, shocking truth finally hits Major Kong as he stares at the battle-hardened mercenary. He's just a kid. 6 months later, showing a bright, modern high school building under a clear blue sky, a world away from the battlefield. A teacher's voice breaks the silence of the classroom, calling for attention. Eyes up here, everyone. Several female students are immediately captivated by the new arrival, with one thinking, OMG, he's hot. In stark contrast, a hostile-looking male student sizes up the newcomer with disdain. The teacher stands at the front of the classroom beside a new student dressed in a neat school uniform. She announces, "We have a new student joining us today." The new student is revealed. It's the mercenary from 6 months ago, now looking like an ordinary high schooler. He offers a polite smile and introduces himself. "I'm Aijinyu." The scene opens on a bright, clear day at J High School, where students are beginning their day. Inside a classroom, a student is focused on their work, the tap of their mechanical pencil echoing softly. This is you, Daeon. She's lost in thought, assuming the person on her mind is in his homeroom class by now. Suddenly, the classroom door bursts open as a classmate rushes in with some shocking news. The student excitedly announces that she just saw the cutest guy in the office, a new third-year transfer student. Her heart is still pounding from the encounter. The classroom starts to clamor with excitement and curiosity about a transfer student joining in the third year. Hearing this, Daeon's mind begins to race. A flicker of hope appears as she wonders if this new student could be her long-lost brother. Her mind drifts back in time to a past she thought was buried. Daeon recalls a painful memory of believing her brother had died in the same plane crash that took her parents' lives. She never imagined he would return after 10 long years. The memory shifts to the day of their reunion. Her own face a mask of shock and disbelief. She remembers reaching out, her hands gently touching his face as if to confirm he was real. Her grandfather, overwhelmed with emotion, pulled him into a tight embrace, tears streaming down his face as he confirmed Aijin was alive after all these years. Watching this emotional scene, Daeon could barely process it, her mind filled with a single, stunned question. "That's my brother?" In the middle of the embrace, Aijin glanced over his grandfather's shoulder, his eyes meeting Daeon's for the first time. There was an intensity in his gaze that made her flinch instinctively. A faint smile appeared on his face as he spoke to her, breaking the silence. "You must be Daeon." Daeon is violently snapped back to reality, her eyes wide with shock as a voice screams her name, waking her from the daydream. A blonde girl, Ms. Kim, stands over her, furious. "Do you have any idea how many times I shouted your name?" Daeon can only stammer out an apology, flustered from being caught off guard. With her arms crossed, Ms. Kim and her friend cornered Daeon, demanding she hand over her gym uniform. Daeon, terrified, meekly asks what she supposed where she gives her uniform away. Her question is met with a cold, mocking snicker from Ms. Kim. The bully's patience has clearly run out, her thoughts filled with rage. She unleashes a torrent of verbal abuse, warning Daeon not to talk back to her. The confrontation turns violent as Ms. Kim slaps Daeon hard across the face, coldly stating that Daeon's problems are not her concern. As Daeon reels from the impact, the bully's friend chimes in with a taunt, snickering that they've clearly been too nice to her lately. The other students can only watch in stunned silence as the bullying continues, unsure of what to do. Ms. Kim escalates her threats, suggesting that a public beatdown is what Daeon needs to be put back in her place. Humiliated and frightened, Daeon lowers her head in silence, enduring the verbal assault. The scene then shifts, taking us back to earlier in the day, outside of classroom 3-2. Inside, The homeroom teacher announces to her students that a new student will be joining them today. The teacher introduces Aijin, explaining he's lived overseas for a long time and asks the class to help him adjust. Aijin stands calmly before his new classmates. The girls in the class are immediately captivated by his looks, whispering about how hot he is. Daeon looks on, a complicated expression on her face. But not everyone is impressed. At the back of the class, a blonde student named Hyuk-Jinju, a known bully, looks on with a dismissive and arrogant smirk. The teacher instructs Aijin to take the empty seat in the back of the classroom, and he politely agrees. As Aijin makes his way down the aisle, another student, Jaehyung, subtly sticks his foot out, planning to trip the new student. Aijin continues walking toward the back, seemingly oblivious to the obstacle being prepared for him. Jaehyung, wearing an orange tracksuit, scoffs at the attention Aijin is getting, muttering insults under his breath. Hyuk-Jin calls out to his friend, Jaehyung, who glances back at him. Jaehyung complains about Aijin taking his time, getting ready to execute his little prank. Jaehyung thinks to himself, readying his foot to see how the new kid will handle being tripped in front of everyone. However, as Aijin walks by, Jaehyung's foot slips harmlessly underneath. Aijin has effortlessly avoided the trip without breaking stride. Having passed the attempted trip, Aijin comes to a sudden stop right next to Jaehyung's desk. Jaehyung is stunned that his attempt failed, while Aijin calmly looks down, having been fully aware of the clumsy trap. Furious that his perfectly timed prank failed, Jaehyung clenches his teeth and aggressively demands to know what Aijin is looking at. As Aijin continues to stare coolly, Jaehyung becomes even more enraged, unable to believe the new student is sizing him up. He becomes confrontational, asking Aijin if he has a problem. Aijin's expression remains neutral, his silence further infuriating the bully. His mind, however, is somewhere else entirely, recalling a promise he made. His mind flashes back to a crucial conversation with Major Kong, who gave him a stern warning. Once back in Korea, he needed to stay away from any fights. In the memory, Major Kong asks if Aijin understands, clearly worried. Aijin, however, responds with a calm confidence that he already knows the protocol. Aijin explained that he would never enter a combat situation without sufficient intel. Major Kong looks on, slightly surprised by the tactical answer. To him, making a rash decision that could cost him his life would be a rookie mistake. He assured Major Kong that he's a pro who has survived countless battlefields over the past 10 years by being careful, not by being reckless. But Major Kong holds up a hand, stopping him. He clarifies that Aijin's tactical survival isn't what he's talking about. The Major's concern isn't for Aijin, but for the poor kid that ends up on the receiving end of Aijin's skills. With that, the flashback ends. Back in the present, Aijin stands before Jaehyung, who aggressively repeats his question, asking if Aijin wants to die. Aijin remains completely unfazed, his expression unchanging. The teacher notices the tense atmosphere and asks if there is something wrong. Aijin immediately defuses the situation, turning to the teacher with a polite smile and an apology. He then calmly walks past the still-seething Jaehyung to finally take a seat. Jaehyung can only sneer as he walks away, muttering under his breath what a wimp and a loser Aijin is for backing down. Aijin continues to his desk, completely ignoring the insults. From his seat, Hyuk-Jinju watches the scene with a look of slight amusement. As Aijin sits, the teacher asks another student, Yang-chan, to help him get ready for first class. With the bell ringing, the teacher dismisses the class for their next lesson. A moment later, a friendly face pops up beside Aijin. A student with freckles introduces himself with a cheerful wave as Yang-chan Park. Yang-chan confirms Aijin's name, and Aijin responds with a simple yup, a small smile on his face. Yang-chan then nervously glances over his shoulder towards the bullies. He leans in to whisper to Aijin, hoping he wasn't too shaken by what just happened and confirming that he saw Jaehyung try to trip him. Meanwhile, the bully in question, Jaehyung, is busy pestering another student about their new phone. Yang-chan points out the two troublemakers Aijin should watch out for, Jaehyung Lee and the one sitting behind him, Hyuk-Jinju. He gestures to where they are extorting a classmate. Aijin listens intently, taking in the valuable information about his new classmates. Yang Chan finishes his friendly warning by letting Aijin know that their first class is math. Aijin gives a simple thanks, appreciating the gesture from his new friend. Yang Chan is relieved, thinking to himself that Aijin seems like a nice guy as he tells him to feel free to ask for help anytime. Just then, the math teacher, an elderly bald man with glasses, arrives and tells the class to open their textbooks to page 47. He begins the lesson, his chalk tapping against the board as he writes out a complex equation. The student sitting next to Aijin already looks bored, letting out a massive yawn. Aijin, on the other hand, watches with a hint of amusement, finding the ordinary classroom scene. In front of him, his new friend Yang Chan is studiously taking notes, completely focused on the lesson. A small, genuine smile plays on Aijin's lips as he takes it all in. Throughout the classroom, some students are already dozing off at their desks. Others are passing the time by secretly looking at their phones and laughing with friends. From outside the window, the sharp sound of a gym teacher's whistle cuts through the quiet drone of the math lesson. Aijin glances out and sees a group of students playing dodgeball on the field below, a typical scene of high school life. He looks on, an observer in this strangely peaceful world. The mundane sounds of school trigger a sudden, jarring flashback to the chaos of his past life as a mercenary. He remembers the visceral feeling of being in a life-or-death struggle, his face twisted in a silent scream. He sees an image of his younger self, a child huddled alone in the grim realities of a war zone. He recalls the constant fighting, a young boy forced to become a soldier to survive. His memories are filled with the stark imagery of training, bullets tearing through practice targets. He sees himself through the scope of a rifle, his eyes filled with a cold, terrifying focus that no child should ever have. The sound of a gunshot echoes in his mind, a constant refrain from his past. As the flashback fades, Aijin is left with a single thought about his new surroundings. His gaze drifts back toward the window, looking out at the calm, blue sky. He concludes his thought with a quiet sense of wonder. It's peaceful here. After school, students pour out of the building. In the crowd, Daeyeon and her friends walk together, one of them noticing someone up ahead. Daeyeon glances over and blushes, seeing Aijin waiting for her. She approaches him hesitantly, asking if he's leaving. Aijin turns to her and confirms that he was waiting for her to walk home together. Startled that he waited for her, Daeyeon listens as Aijin explains he wanted to walk home with her, as long as she didn't have other plans. Flustered and glancing at her waiting friends, Daeyeon quickly assures him that she doesn't have any other plans. Aijin gives her a warm smile and says, "Then let's walk home together." A small, happy smile appears on Daeyeon's face as she quietly agrees. As they start walking, a palpable, awkward silence hangs in the air between them. Daeyeon feels the awkwardness too, a bead of sweat forming as she tries to think of something to say. Aijin breaks the silence, directly addressing the tension by asking, "It's awkward, isn't it?" Daeyeon quickly and unconvincingly denies it. He smiles, telling her she doesn't have to feel bad about it. He then admits, "It feels pretty weird for me too." Surprised by his candidness, Daeyeon looks at him, finding it easier to talk. He opens up, confessing that since she was only 9 when the plane accident happened, she doesn't really remember much about him or their grandpa. Clutching her backpack strap, she adds that it must be even weirder for him, since he was only 7 years old at the time. The two of them continue their walk in silence as they pass by a local convenience store. Inside, a familiar-looking bully waits impatiently with her friend, wondering when their leader, Huijin, is going to show up. Daeyeon looks up in alarm as she sees the group of bullies from the convenience store confronting them. The one with hair curlers tells her friend that Huijin is on her way. Annoyed at her friend's question, the girl with the curlers says, "How would I know?" before her eyes land on the pair outside, and she calls out, "Daeyeon, you?" Daeyeon freezes, her face pale with terror as she wonders what to do. The male bully with the group asks who Daeyeon is. The girl with the curlers explains that Daeyeon is the girl their friend Huijin hates. With a mocking smirk, the bully steps forward and taunts Daeyeon, asking, "Walking home with your boyfriend Daeyeon?" As Aijin Yu and his sister Daeyeon walk together, they are accosted by a group of bullies. One of them rudely mocks Daeon, expressing surprise that someone like her could be on a date. Flustered, Daeon quickly denies their dating, explaining that Aijin is her brother. The bullies, including a girl named Huijin, look on with disbelief and contempt. Aijin, unfazed by the bullies, quietly asks Daeon who the girl confronting them is. Daeon, sweating nervously, whispers that she's a friend from her homeroom. Huijin, the female bully, overhears this and smirks menacingly. With a sharp, intimidating look, she questions if Daeon really considers her a friend. Daeon is taken aback by the question. Huijin presses further, her tone dripping with sarcasm, asking if Daeon seriously believes they are friends. Throughout the exchange, Aijin remains silent, his expression cold and unreadable as he calmly observes the unfolding situation. One of the male bullies, annoyed by Aijin's steady gaze, turns his attention to him. He aggressively asks what Aijin is looking at, causing Daeon to flinch. The curly-haired bully leans in with a snarl, warning Aijin to watch himself before he gets hurt, clearly trying to intimidate him. Meanwhile, the other bullies watch with disdain. Huijin scoffs dismissively, while another male bully glares at Aijin, calling him a bastard under his breath. Aijin's eyes narrow slightly. He's completely calm, his gaze sharp and analytical as he assesses the bullies. His internal monologue kicks in, a detached and tactical assessment of the situation. Are they trying to initiate a fight? The curly-haired bully grows more agitated, unable to stomach Aijin's calm defiance any longer, and decides to confront him directly. He aggressively steps towards Aijin, grabbing Daeon's arm to stop her from getting away and shouting at Aijin for ignoring him. The bully gets right in Aijin's face, trying to provoke him by asking if he's trying to act tough for his sister. From Aijin's perspective, the bully's attempt at intimidation is amateurish. His mercenary training allows him to see all the flaws. He's leaving himself too wide open for someone trying to start a fight. As the bully closes a distance without any caution, Aijin's analytical gaze remains fixed on him, his eye glinting with a dangerous light. Aijin's internal assessment continues, noting that the bully is recklessly exposing all his vital points, making him an easy target. He finishes his analysis, observing that the bully doesn't even have a weapon. To Aijin, this is hardly a threat. Looking down from his perspective, Aijin questions the bully's foolishness. Why is he so rash in leaving himself exposed like this? However, a promise he made to his old commander, Major Kong, echoes in his mind, reminding him to avoid confrontation. Just don't fight, he tells himself. Aijin lets out a faint sigh. For a moment, he considers just walking away to keep his promise and maintain a peaceful life. But the bully mistakes his hesitation for fear. Enraged, he lunges forward and grabs Aijin by the collar, screaming for an answer. Seeing the situation escalate, Daeon panics. She bows deeply in a desperate apology, trying to shield Aijin from the bully's wrath. She quickly concocts a story, explaining that her brother has lived overseas for most of his life, and therefore isn't used to how things work in Korea. She desperately hopes this excuse will be enough to appease them. Daeon's desperate excuse is met with contempt. The female bully, Huijin, simply snickers, clearly amused by her pathetic attempt to de-escalate the situation. As Daeon trembles, her head still bowed in apology, the bully callously dismisses her plea with simple, "So what?" Her explanation meant nothing to them. Still clutching Aijin's collar, the curly-haired bully explodes in anger, shouting that he doesn't care about Aijin's background or any other excuse. At that moment, something in Aijin shifts. His passive observation is over, and a cold, decisive look appears on his face. He's done waiting. Daeon looks up, her eyes wide with terror. She can sense the sudden, dangerous change in the atmosphere and fears what might happen next. Before the bully can react, Aijin's hand snaps out, grabbing the bully's own hand that was clutching his collar. The sharp, cracking sound is followed by a cry of pain. The bully reels back in shock and agony, screaming that his wrist is broken. Aijin's intervention was swift, precise, and brutal. With the immediate threat neutralized, his movements fluid and purposeful. He's preparing to end this. Daeon stares, completely stunned by the turn of events. She can't reconcile the quiet boy beside her with a person who just effortlessly disabled a bully. Aijin turns to his sister. His expression is now serious, but reassuring as he tells her to wait here for a minute. Confused, Daeyeon can only watch as Aijin gently places his jacket over her head, shielding her from the violence he knows is coming. He carefully turns her away from the scene, repeating his instruction, just 1 minute. He is protecting her not just physically, but also from witnessing his brutality. The bully, recovering from the initial shock, lets his rage take over. He charges forward with a furious roar, ready to attack Aijin. Aijin watches the charge with a calm, predatory focus. His eyes are cold and calculating, ready to meet the attack. As the bully swings wildly, Aijin effortlessly dodges and counters with a single, devastating punch to the bully's torso. The bully doubles over, blood flying from his mouth. The force of the impact sends the bully tumbling backward, completely incapacitated and defeated in a matter of seconds. The other two bullies, Huijin and the boy, jump to their feet, their expressions a mixture of shock and terror at the sudden, one-sided beatdown. Aijin stands calmly amidst the aftermath, his tie fluttering in the breeze. With this single act of violence, he thinks to himself, well, there goes my promise to Major Kong. His opponent lies unconscious on the ground, blood pooling around his face. Aijin's peaceful school life is already over. The remaining male bully stares, sweating profusely and trembling in fear. He can't comprehend the level of violence he just witnessed. His mind races in panic, his internal thoughts a jumble of disbelief and terror. What the hell is this? The sun rises, casting a warm glow over the mountains, heralding the start of a new day. However, the scene is not one of peace. The heavy tread of military boots marches across the dusty ground. A unit of soldiers runs in formation, their voices calling out a rhythmic count during their morning exercise in front of the military base. Watching over them is Major Kong, his expression stern and contemplative. One of his subordinates approaches him, calling out for the major's attention. The subordinate poses a question. Isn't it today? He clarifies that it's Aijin's first day of school, a fact Major Kong confirms with a simple, that's right. Major Kong expresses his lingering concern, admitting that even after 6 months of training, he can't help but worry about Aijin. Looking out toward the distance, he reflects on Aijin's difficult past, having lived in such a harsh environment since he was only 9. He hopes Aijin can adjust well to being back home. Despite his worries, Major Kong feels a sense of satisfaction, confident that his special lessons on life in Korea have prepared Aijin enough. His subordinate eagerly agrees. The subordinate reaffirms his confidence in the major's training without a sliver of doubt. But elsewhere, that preparation is put to the test. With a powerful blow, Aijin lands a devastating punch on a man. The man cries out as he's sent flying backward from the force of the blow. He crashes hard onto the tables and chairs behind him with a loud thud. Aijin looks on, his thoughts grim. Well, there goes my promise to Major Kong. He assesses the man he just struck, noting with clinical detachment that his eyes have already rolled back into his head. Aijin internally questions if the man truly fainted with a single blow, as the onlookers stare in stunned silence. A close-up on Aijin's face reveals a calm, steady gaze, betraying no emotion after the violent outburst. The action isn't over. Aijin suddenly jumps, launching himself into another confrontation. He immediately engages another man, who raises his fist to fight back. With another explosive POW, Aijin delivers a brutal strike to the man's gut. The force of the impact sends the man flying backward over a railing, startling a nearby cat and sending food and drink scattering. The man screams as he falls helplessly through the air. With a sickening BM, the man lands hard on the ground below. From above, Aijin watches dispassionately, his work done. The convenience store Ajumma, a bystander with a roller still in her hair, stares with shocked and speechless expression, trying to process the chaos she just witnessed. The convenience store worker is startled as Aijin now stand before her, his previous act of violence leaving a chilling silence. A close-up on Aijin's face reveals his cold, sharp eyes, which seem to pierce right through the terrified woman. The worker breaks out in a cold sweat and shudders, completely intimidated by his threatening aura. In her mind, she repeats his name, Aijin, as if trying to connect it to the chaos she just witnessed. As Aijin stands with the worker, his sister, Daeonyu, arrives at the scene, her view partially obscured. Daeon looks on with wide, shocked eyes, clutching her jacket, trying to process the scene of destruction before her. She sees the two men Aijin took down, lying unconscious on the ground, and tries to understand what just happened, recalling that he had covered her eyes with his jacket only for a moment. Aijin turns his calm, unreadable expression back, her face pale with fear, completely terrified of the young man in front of her. Without another word, Aijin walks away, amidst the overturned furniture. He approaches Daeon, who is still clutching her jacket. "Sorry, did I startle you?" he asks, to which he can only manage a confused "huh?" Trying to change the subject and ease the tension, Aijin gets an idea. He suggests getting a snack from the store and asks if she has any favorites. Still flustered, Daeon stammers that she is okay. Aijin gently asks if she's sure. Daeon hesitates, looking away for a moment, lost in thought. Seeing her hesitation, Aijin rubs the back of his neck and says, "Well, then should we head back home?" he suggests, deciding not to press the issue. Daeon seems to snap out of her daze, blushing slightly as she offers him the jacket he had used to cover her eyes. Aijin takes the jacket with a small, gentle smile, thanking her. From inside her store, the worker watches the scene, completely stunned by the change in his demeanor. She can't comprehend it. What the hell? How is that the same guy who glared at me a minute ago? She thinks, bewildered by the contrast between the cold fighter and the kind brother. The worker watches as Aijin and Daeon begin to walk away together. As they part ways, Daeon tells him she'll see him later. Aijin watches her go, his expression unreadable once more. From a convenience store, the worker watches the silhouettes of the two siblings disappear down the street, still unable to fully process what she witnessed. Her face remains a mask of disbelief. The image of Aijin's dual nature, a gentle brother and a terrifying fighter, seared into her memory as the scene transitions to the siblings walking home. As they walk, Daeon gathers her courage and asks the question on her mind. "Did you do that to those guys earlier?" Aijin answers with a simple, direct, "Yeah." Daeon quietly takes in his admission, murmuring, "I see." She thinks to herself that it's strange. He doesn't seem like the type of person who would pick fights. Trying to be a helpful sister, Daeon explains that in Korea, it's considered rude to stare at people the way he did, as it can lead to uncomfortable situations. Aijin replies that where he's from, meeting someone's eyes is also risky and can be dangerous depending on the opponent. Surprised, Daeon asks, "Really? Then why did you stare like that earlier?" Aijin turns to her, his expression softening slightly. Daeon's eyes widen in shock as she realizes the implication of his actions. He answers plainly, "Because it seemed like they were causing you trouble." The realization that he acted to protect her hits Daeon, and she turns away, a blush creeping onto her cheeks. Overwhelmed with emotion, her heart melts, and she can't bring herself to look at him. Aijin notices her strange reaction and looks at her with a questioning gaze, confused. They stand in an awkward silence for a moment before Aijin internally wonders, "Did I say something wrong?" Later that evening, the scene shifts to their family's apartment, lights glowing warmly in the twilight. Inside, their grandfather panics, waving his hands frantically. "Aijin, why don't you let me do that? Just take a seat and have some fruit." Aijin, wearing an adorable strawberry apron, calmly reassures him. "I got it, Grandpa. I can do the dishes on my own, so just sit and relax." The grandpa looks on, flustered and touching his head as he exclaims, "Golly!" He sits down at the table, feeling restless as he watches Aijin handle the chores with quiet competence. The sounds of clinking and clattering fill the kitchen as Aijin continues to wash the dishes. The grandpa looks over with a worried expression, hoping the dinner he prepared was all right, admitting he's never been much of a cook. Aijin turns from the sink with a gentle smile. "Don't say that, Grandpa. I've been eating so well, and every meal has been delicious." As the grandpa stammers in relief, Daeon happily chomps on a piece of fruit. She thinks to herself that while he won't show it, he seems incredibly happy that Aijin likes his cooking. She recalls a touching detail. He even took cooking classes to prepare for Aijin's return home. Happy and relieved, the grandpa turns to his granddaughter. "What did you think of dinner, Dayon?" She smiles and replies, "It was wonderful." The grandpa glances toward the kitchen, a look of contemplation on his face. He then asks Aijin the quintessential question. "How was your first day of school? Anything interesting happen?" Hearing his grandpa's question, Aijin pauses from washing the dishes, a faint memory of the day's violence flickering in his mind. He glances back, a bead of sweat on his brow, and simply replies. Dayon stops eating, her attention piqued as she waits for his answer. "It was good." His simple answer is a stark contrast to the chaotic events that actually transpired. His grandpa, unaware of the lie, smiles warmly. "That's good." As the night deepens, the family exchanges their good nights, a sense of peace settling over the apartment. But for Aijin, sleep doesn't come easily. He lies awake in his bed, the moonlight streaming into his room. His eyes are wide open, staring at the ceiling as his mind begins to drift. His thoughts drift back to his grandpa's emotional words from their first reunion. "I'm so glad that you made it back home alive." He remembers the tears streaming down his grandpa's face as he held him, proclaiming his return was truly a blessing. The memory continues, his grandpa acknowledging that Aijin doesn't remember much from his childhood. But none of that mattered to him. "It's okay. What matters is that you're alive. Eat up." He recalls a lavish spread of food his grandpa had prepared, a feast to welcome him home, despite not knowing what foods he liked. Lying in bed, Aijin looks up, the memories swirling in his mind. He closes his eyes, savoring the foreign yet comforting warmth of a single word. "Family!" But his brief peace is shattered by the jarring beep of an electronic warning sign, a sound that triggers a darker memory. The memory throws him into the chaos of a rattling plane cabin. Panic erupts as passengers scream and luggage tumbles from overhead compartments. Light fixtures drop from the ceiling as the violent turbulence continues, throwing the passengers into terror. A young Aijin, caught in the mayhem, fumbles with an oxygen mask as the cabin rattles violently around him. The plane lurches, and the mask is ripped from his face. A close-up reveals the sheer terror in the young boy's eyes as he faces the unfolding disaster. A sudden, violent swoosh fills his senses, as the memory culminates in the horrifying image of the plane exploding in midair. The traumatic memory sends a jolt through his body. Aijin jumps up in bed, gasping for air as he's violently pulled from a nightmare. Panting, Aijin buries his face in his hands, trying to ground himself in the present. He tries to dismiss the vivid horror, telling himself it must have been just a dream. But sleep does not return. The hands of the alarm clock tick forward, marking the passage of time in the quiet room. He sits on the edge of his bed, the silence of the early morning pressing in on him. Suddenly, a soft rattling sound from his bedroom door snaps him to attention, his senses on high alert. He gets up and cautiously opens the door with a clack. He finds his sister, Dayon, in the kitchen, already wearing a cute apron. She smiles and says, "You're up? I was just about to wake you." Aijin looks around the empty apartment and asks, "Where's Grandpa?" Dayon informs him that he left for work at dawn. Aijin is surprised to hear he has a job. She explains that their grandpa took time off just to be home when he arrived, and that today was his first day back. Now dressed in her school uniform, Dayon waves goodbye, explaining she needs to get to school early. As she rushes out the door, she reminds him not to forget the breakfast she prepared. Aijin quietly replies, "Okay, thanks." He stands alone in the now silent apartment, the morning light filling the space. He glances over with a subtle, thoughtful expression. On the table is a full, warm breakfast spread, a clear gesture of care from his sister. The scene shifts to an exterior shot of JHS High School, gleaming in the morning sun. Inside, two female students are talking in the hallway. The confident, blonde student asks her friend with rollers in her hair, "So that transfer student from yesterday was her brother?" The other student, looking nervous, confirms with a hesitant, "Yeah." A close-up reveals a nervous sweat on her face. hinting that their interest in Aijin is far from friendly, setting the stage for future conflict. The convenience store is a mess, with chairs overturned and items scattered on the floor. Two young men on the ground, groaning in pain, looks on in terror, wondering how one person could have knocked out two guys with a single punch each. The bully on the floor glares back, angrily asking if he looks okay. Still startled by the sudden violence, stares with wide eyes, trying to process what just happened. A blonde girl in a school uniform, Huijin, appears at the scene, looking at the chaos with a questioning expression. She directs her question to her friend, the one with rollers still in her hair, demanding to know what's going on. Visibly shaken, Huijin's friend timidly suggests that maybe they should stop bullying Daeon now, implying the person responsible for the fight is on Daeon's side. She nervously gulps, remembering the cold, terrifying look in Aijin's eyes as he took down the bullies. The memory alone is enough to frighten her. She clutches her hands together, the gesture revealing her deep-seated anxiety about the situation. Walking down the school hallway, she tries to convince herself that everything will be fine, even as she watches Huijin walk ahead, knowing the trouble that might be coming. Her worry is justified, as she knows that Huijin's brother and his friends have a reputation for running the school. Meanwhile, in another part of the school, students are walking and chatting by the stairs, completely unaware of the escalating tensions. Suddenly, someone is smacked hard on the back of the head, letting out a cry of pain. It's Daeon. She holds her head, a look of pained surprise on her face, as she turns to see who hit her. Huijin stands before her, flanked by her nervous friend. With a condescending look, she tells Daeon not to overreact to the slap. Huijin looks down the stairs and coldly asks Daeon what she wants, before demanding she come with her for a moment. A frightened Daeon looks back at Huijin, timidly asking where they are going. Huijin's expression turns into a malicious grin as she mocks Daeon, questioning if she seriously thinks having a brother changes anything for her. Her face hardens as she issues a threat. Daeon can either shut up and follow her, or get beaten up right there on the stairs. The scene shifts to an empty recycling station behind the school, the chosen location for the confrontation. A slippered foot lashes out with a powerful kick, aimed directly at Daeon. Daeon cries out as the impact sends her tumbling to the ground with a heavy thud. Huijin looms over fallen Daeon, berating her for not keeping her head down as she was told. Daeon can only look up in confusion and fear. Daeon flinches as Huijin tells her not to play dumb, making it clear this is about the incident at the convenience store the day before. Tapping a message on her phone, Huijin smirks with cruel satisfaction. She taunts Daeon, suggesting that having a supposedly tough brother has made her defiant. It's too bad. She trails off, implying a consequence is already in motion. Her eyes narrow with malice as she finishes her thought, delivering the chilling threat, saying that because her brother is in for one hell of a welcoming to JHS High. The statement hangs in the air, a direct promise of retaliation. Confused and scared, Daeon asks what Huijin means by her threat. Huijin sneers, asking if Daeon has any idea who her brother messed with. She reveals that the guys he beat up are her own brother's friends. With chilling certainty, she adds that those same friends are likely paying a visit to Aijin right at this very moment. A smug, satisfied smile plays on Huijin's lips as she imagines her revenge being enacted on her behalf. The full weight of the threat lands on Daeon. Her eyes widen in shock and horror as she realizes her brother is in immediate danger. Overcoming her fear with a surge of protective anger, Daeon confronts Huijin directly, demanding to know what she's planning to do to her brother. Huijin retorts by slapping Daeon across the face, viciously telling the worthless girl to shut her trap. The sting of the slap leaves a red mark on Daeon's cheek, her eyes wide with shock and humiliation. Tears welling up, Daeon bows her head, defeated for a moment by the cruelty. Her mind races with a single, devastating thought. Aijin is in trouble. Tears stream down her face as the guilt and fear mix together. Her eyes burn with a new, desperate resolve. And it's all because of her. She clenches her jaw, her fear transforming into a fierce determination to protect him. In a sudden burst of movement, Daeon jumps to her feet, startling Huijin and her friend. Before they can react, She takes off running. Huijin screams at her not to run away, but Daeyeon is already gone. Daeyeon sprints through the school halls, heading for her brother's classroom. 3-2. Inside the classroom, students look towards the door, alerted by a growing clamor from outside. The other students begin to murmur amongst themselves, sensing that trouble is brewing. A group of menacing upperclassmen, led by the two bullies Aijin previously beat up, marches into classroom. Aijin watches them approach, his expression calm and analytical as he assesses a new threat. The two bullies in the convenience store are back for revenge, their faces bruised but full of anger, one with a bandage on his nose. The leader of the group, a smug-looking young man with styled orange hair and a neck tattoo, steps forward. This is Huijin's brother. The tense standoff is shattered as the classroom door bursts open. Daeyeon stumbles in, desperately calling out her brother's name. Aijin, panting heavily, her uniform smudged with dirt, her eyes are wide with panic. She locks eyes with Aijin, her expression pleading as she takes in the scene of him being cornered by the group of bullies. Surprised by her sudden and panicked entrance, Aijin calls out to his sister, who has interrupted his confrontation with the bullies. His focus shifts completely to her, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern for her distressed state. Daeyeon gasps for breath, the scrape on her chin visible as she tries to recover from her desperate sprint across the school. Aijin's eyes then fall on a large, dirty smear across the front of her uniform, a clear sign that she was attacked. In an instant, his entire demeanor changes. The concerned surprise vanishes, replaced by a cold, sharp focus as he processes the evidence of the assault on his sister. One of the bullies scoffs at the scene, mockingly asking if Daeyeon is here, because she's worried about her dear brother. Huijin's brother, the leader of the gang, dismisses a heartwarming display of sibling loyalty, complaining that his own sister just nags him. He tells his friend to shut up. Watching from the doorway, Huijin smirks and taunts her brother, telling him she'll worry when he's actually beaten up by someone, daring him to act. The taunts and the sight of his hurt sister are the final trigger. Aijin's face becomes an emotionless mask. The high school student is gone, and the teenage mercenary has taken over, ready to eliminate the threat before him.